Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Archdiocese of Atlanta on a very wonderfully happy day for us. This morning in Rome, announced at 6 o'clock our time, 12 o'clock Rome time, Pope Francis appointed Father Joel Konzen to be our new auxiliary bishop. You will recall that within a year, Pope Francis named our two former auxiliaries diocesan bishops in their own see. Bishop David Talley going to the See of Alexandria in Louisiana, and later Bishop Luis Sarama going to the See of Raleigh in North Carolina. The Holy Father has a great affection for the Archdiocese because within that same short time span, he appointed two new auxiliaries. Bishop Ned Schlesinger, who today is in Bogota on a vocation junket, and so that's why he's not here, but obviously he knows about the happy news that is ours. And Bishop-elect Joel will describe in his own words how he learned about this appointment. Let me tell you that this appointment is a recognition of the vitality of this local church. We are growing. I believe the work of evangelization is a positive force. We have many wonderful things going on. It just so happened that last week we celebrated Catholic Schools Week. And during the very Catholic Schools Week observance, the Holy Father took one of our Catholic school administrators and gave him a new job. I talked to Bishop-elect Konzen a couple of times, several times, over the course of the last week, especially the day after he received the news and accepted the appointment. And I did tell him, the Holy Father does have a way of ruining a good night's sleep, doesn't he? And he said yes. But many of you already know Bishop-elect Konzen because you have either been with him over at Marist or in other situations where he has already demonstrated to you and to many, many others his wonderful pastoral skills, his sense of humor, his great capacity to preach well, to be engaged in the lives of young people and their parents, and to have a great pastoral heart. So I could not be happier to present to you our new auxiliary bishop-elect, Joel Konzen.
Good morning. I should say at the outset that I am more than a little surprised and somewhat nervous. This is unlike anything I've done before. I'm grateful to Archbishop Gregory for, as he said, checking in with me this past week several times. He has shown me a lot of support while we were living this past week sub secreto at Marist. I live sub Mariae nomine. But sub secreto, in secret, makes for a very long week, and it was a very long week. I appreciate, too, the Archbishop's openness to the service of religious priests in the Archdiocese, which I have certainly enjoyed. And I had a chance during the week to speak also with Bishop Ned, who was instrumental in helping to put me at ease about what might lie ahead. Of Of course, I thank the Holy Father, Pope Francis, for his confidence in appointing me. We Marists are supposed to avoid ecclesiastical honors. That's in our constitutions. That's not easy to do when the papal nuncio tells you in a few minutes that this is the will of the Holy Father. I felt a little bit like it was the angel Gabriel calling, and I know I wasn't as graceful in my response as Mary was, but eventually I got out the answer that a son of Mary would be expected to offer. Also, I have to be grateful to my mother and father, both of whom have died, for the great example of living a faith-filled life that they offered to my brother and to me. Because we didn't have a Catholic school in the little town that I grew up in, the Sisters of Mercy came on Saturdays and offered us what was at that time called catechism classes, while our non-Catholic friends were gorging on Sky King and my friend Flicka at home. We were in catechism classes, and again, I'm very grateful to the sisters for what they have instilled, and I still keep in touch with the Mercy Sisters. Also knew a lot of wonderful priests and religious as I was growing up, and had the example of those that I'm grateful for. I had an uncle, great uncle, who was a priest in the Diocese of Pueblo, Colorado. And so on an occasion like this, I think of all of those good people, and I'm grateful to all of those good people for what they have done. I am shaped and will continue to be shaped by the 43 years I've spent as a Marist religious, 28 of which have been here in Atlanta. And I would say my Marist confreres have been a true family to me, and the folks at Marist School have been a great community that have probably nurtured my spirit in many ways and provided wonderful friendships. Prior to entering the Marist, though, I did study for 2 years for the Archdiocese of Atlanta, and when I departed to go to the novitiate, Archbishop Dinellen said to me, Godspeed, and maybe one day you'll be ministering here in the Archdiocese of Atlanta again. So I hope he's smiling at the recollection of having said that. Look forward to serving the people of the Archdiocese of Atlanta. Quizás podré celebrar la misa en español, pero mi español está lejos de ser perfecto. What I know of Spanish I learned in high school, and I haven't had a lot of occasion to use it since, but I am willing to put it there for the disposal of the Archdiocese. I also celebrate a Latin Mass each year for our Marist school community, but have a feeling that Spanish might be a little more in demand. So that is more than enough about me. I appreciate the good wishes of all here in the Archdiocese, and I will soon be among you and at your disposal. Thank you. Thank you. So I think the floor is open if anyone wants to know a little more.
Where were you born?
I was born in Toledo, Ohio, and I still get back there twice a year. I go in the summer and I go at Christmas time. It's one of the great things about being a school priest. I get back up there. I help out at my mother's parish at Christmas time, which is one of those where 3 churches have been combined into a single parish. And so this past Christmas, the pastor was very grateful that I could be there. He was going to try to do 8 masses, and I took half of them. And nice to see the church filled in New Bavaria, Ohio, just as it is here in Atlanta. So, yeah. Other questions? The Archbishop made reference to the fact that we were at the education banquet when this call came through, and we were vesting, we were getting ready for Mass, and the call came through from the Apostolic Nuncio, so that was quite a surprise. And I know that whatever I was saying was not declarative sentences. it was probably pretty hackneyed, and I was trying to get an answer out one way or the other and trying to think at the same time. And I did tell him at the beginning, Mass is starting in 8 minutes. So he knew that we were limited, and that was probably good from his point of view, that that we weren't going to be long on the phone. So, but it was quite a surprise, and the Archbishop and I were able, as he said, to talk the next day, and I began to know a little bit more about what might be coming. So, yeah. Yes, Andrew.
Father Joel, can I ask you about the Society of Mary?
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about the charism of the Society and how you tried to live your ministry in relation to that charism.
Sure. The charism of the Society of Mary is summed up, I think, in a section of our constitutions called the Spirit of the Society. And key in that, I think, is a statement that a Marist is to think, act, judge, and feel as Mary would. Our founder, Father Joel M, said that the Marists do not subscribe to any particular Marian devotion, but instead concentrate on the life of Mary and attempting to be Mary in the church. And so that's been a challenge, but a good challenge. I mean, I think for me, when I heard that the first time, it made a lot of sense to me, and it made me think, well, this is a spirituality I understand and I can get on board with. I want to be a part of that. So it's a relatively simple way of looking at what we do in the church, and I think things like humility, hospitality, prayerfulness, union with God and with one another, not always particular to the Society of Mary, but these are the virtues that Father Joel M wanted to instill in the first Marist, and that he tried to make sure that the schools that he was responsible for would also reflect.
And how was give me an example of how the time in your life where you felt that has shaped your ministry.
You know, I think it's been good for me, especially in later years at Marist, because I've been there now 28 years, to be able to minister to people. You know, we get into this to actually be ministers and as a priest, sacramental ministers. And yes, a lot of my work has been sitting at a desk, but I've been particularly happy when, as part of the work that I've done at Marist, I've been called upon to be a sacramental minister, somebody who does baptisms, weddings, funerals, and everything in between. That's allowed me to, again, exercise a ministry that I feel that's why I became both a Marist and a priest. And so I try to do that in a way that's both supportive of the people that I'm with and hopefully in consonance with the larger Catholic Church. Yeah. Yes.
What is the difference between your Society of Mary and the Society of Mary that runs the University of Dayton?
That's a good question. The difference between this Society of Mary and the other Society of Mary. Well, one of them is more privileged than the other. No, I'm just kidding. So now they have colleges and we don't. Yeah, that's one difference. And they also have many more brothers than we do. We do have brothers as part of our Society of Mary. As far as I know, we're the only two orders in the Catholic Church that have exactly the same name and the same initials. And some wonder whether that was a mistake in the Vatican that was made. So we were both founded in France at roughly the same time, the early to mid 19th century. And they're probably about the same number in the United States, maybe a little larger than we are. They have more high schools than we do. At last count, I think they had 17. We have 3 in the United States. So their founder is Chaminade. Ours is Konzen. Of course, we have St. Peter Chanel. You can get a little lost in all of these sea priests from France who are all roughly around the same time. But because I'm from Toledo, a lot of people in Ohio would make the mistake by saying, "Oh yes, of course, the Marists, University of Dayton," and then I'd have to explain that no, that's the Marianists. But sometimes I say if we were businesses, we would be merged by now. But but we're not businesses. We each have our separate charisms, and I think that's important to each of the groups. So yeah.
Bishop-elect, so your ordination date has been set. So what will you be doing sort of in the transition weeks?
It's a good question. What will I be doing in the weeks between now and April the 3rd? I think I'm going to be trying to help the folks at Marist tie up any loose ends that I might have left behind, and I will be trying to move myself from Marist School, and at some point figuring out just what a bishop does on a daily basis. So, yeah. Other questions? Yes. Dennis?
One of the things that you'll get to do as a bishop of the Archdiocese of Atlanta is have to divide your loyalties, perhaps, because one of our schools beat your school this year in football. So
I come as an agent of God's peace. We're all God's children, and I'm going to have to demonstrate that at football games as well as elsewhere. So, yes. Archbishop.
Bishop Konzen, you are now the first Marist bishop in Georgia.
That's right. Bishop Keyes was also a Marist. He was the Bishop of Savannah from, I'm going to say, the 1920s, maybe 1922 or so to 1935, somewhere in there. Although I didn't know Bishop Keyes by just a little bit, just missed him by a year or two. But we in our rectory, when you walk in, there is his portrait, and so we've been reminded every day that there was such a person. And of course, as you know, the Archdiocese of Atlanta was formed out of the Diocese of Savannah, so I suppose you could say there's a lineage that goes back to another Marist. And you may know that I'm not the first principal of Marist School either to be appointed as a bishop. Our founder, Father Gunn, was named in 1911 as the Bishop of Natchez, Mississippi, and so he's buried in Natchez, and we sometimes call the building that I'm in alternately the Father Gunn building, the Bishop Gunn building, because we knew him as Father Gunn, and but Bishop, and I suppose that's what will happen to me too. So whatever I will be called, yeah. Good.
Can I ask one more question?
Yes.
You've taught, I saw in your bio that you've taught a leadership class
Yes.
at Mary. And sort of perhaps as a reflection of your own leadership style, what are the character traits that you've, after teaching this class, that you have, two or three of them that you've seen that make an effective leader? And second follow-up on that is, outside the church, who is a leader that you admire and why?
The answer to your first question, a few leadership traits that I would recommend. I tell the students that Archbishop has been good to come every time I've offered the class. I tell the students that if they will look at the 12 to 15 leaders that I've brought into the class for them to interact with, that they probably will pick up by the time they reach the fourth or fifth one maybe, that a common thread is the care that these people exercise for those who work with them and for them. That rises to the top, and that may not be what a 16-year-old is always thinking is going to be the chief component of a successful leader. They may be thinking more about the exercise of authority in one manner or another. But so we talk about servant leaderhood and transformational leadership, and the fact that that the successful and the transformational leader empowers those who are working with him or her and helps them to achieve their goals. And so so that, and just kind of ethical rectitude, if you will, honesty, minding the important things about one's responsibilities, and trying to help other people to do that, I think would be important. As to somebody that I admire, this is Atlanta, I would say Martin Luther King Jr., and especially because he said, anybody can lead because anybody can serve. And I think that that's hard to beat. When I'm dealing with young people, I think that's a great message for them to know. You don't have to always be appointed. You don't have to hold an office. You can simply decide you're going to serve, and already you're leading. So I think that's probably what I would say. Yeah. All right.
Is your brother still with us?
My brother is. He's in Ohio, and he's retired, and happy about that. And
How long did it take you to call him?
I haven't yet. So that'll happen today at some point. So I can only imagine what he might say. So yeah, good.
What are some of your hobbies that you like to do for fun?
You know, hobbies for me would be travel. Would probably be the big thing. I always have a trip brewing. I kind of find that that's a good way to live, thinking about where I might be headed next, and wasn't thinking about heading here, but I think that's I enjoy that. Enjoy reading a fair amount, and always have. I enjoy music. When I say music, I know classical music, liturgical music. I know jazz a bit. And I know Motown because that's when I was growing up. And when we were in the seminary, that's what we did. We passed those 45s around, and, so I'm dating myself, but, you can kind of tell anyway. But, cooking, like to cook every once in a while. And, of course, I'm like a lot of people in my place. I enjoy cooking because I only do it 4 or 5 times a year. I take my hat off to those people who do that every night, who may say they don't enjoy it as much. So, yeah. Good. Well, that may be all. Good. Thank you. Archbishop, thank you.
I think you can see from those answers and his quickness why the Holy Father said, that's the man. And I am so grateful that he did. God bless you, Joel. Welcome.
Thank you.
And I believe the transition will be both easy and very, very fortunate for both you and the Archdiocese.
Thank you.
God bless you.